Namaste, and welcome to our continuing series on the synthesis of yoga with our beloved Ranga. We are on page 75, beginning with the sentence, "The most disconcerting discovery."
I'll read each sentence and we will discuss it if necessary. The most disconcerting discovery is to find that every part of us, intellect, will, sense mind, nervous or desire self, the heart, the body, has each, as it were, its own complex individuality and natural formation independent of the rest. It neither agrees with itself, nor with the others, nor with the representative ego, which is the shadow cast by some central and centralizing self on our superficial ignorance. So, Srimad is saying that we are not one very simple, with just a body and a mind and a life. No, we are much more complicated than that. We have so many parts in us which we don't even know about. Okay, so
it's a blow to the ego.
Okay, so and they are all quarreling among themselves. The mind quarrels with the vital, and the vital quarrels with the body, and the mind also quarrels with the body, and the body is the one that suffers the most, because the vital sometimes imposes things on the body which it can't take. For instance, you deprive yourself of sleep, the body suffers. You eat too much, the body suffers.
You overwork,
the body suffers. You eat too little, that also many people do, that also the body suffers. So the body is the one that suffers the most. Usually it's the vital that has its way, and the vital manages to convince even the mind that what it wants is perfectly okay. The mind sometimes tries to put pressure on the vital, doesn't succeed much. Okay, so this is what he's saying. So, the most disconcerting make you uncomfortable. Okay, discovery is to find that every part of us, intellect, will, sense mind, nervous or desire self, the heart, the body. So he has listed all the parts of the body. The intellect is the pure mind which is objective. There are three parts of the mind. No? There is a pure mind, a vital mind, and a physical mind. And all these are parts of the mind, but the intellect is that which is rational, or at least tries to be rational, and has logic, and tries not to be affected by the desires and the needs of the body. That's the intellect. Then we have the will. The will belongs to the higher vital and the psychic. There is a will. Very often our will doesn't work, but when it comes from deep within, it does work. The will is there everywhere, even in the mind the will is there. Okay, so there can be a mental will, a vital will. Okay, athletes have even some sort of a physical will. When you are doing a marathon race and you are dead tired and you've got 200 meters to go, you force yourself to go. The body does try to do that. So will is there everywhere, but mainly the real will is in the psychic. That makes it very easy. But the vital also will is there. Sense mind, that part of the mind which interprets the senses. The senses are not always interpreted. A baby, all the senses are working. The data is being collected by the senses and sending to the brain. The brain is not responding. So the sense mind is not yet developed in a child. It slowly develops. Then when you recognize things, then the sense mind is beginning to interpret. The sense mind is the manas, is the lowest part. You can also call it the physical mind. The physical mind, the sense mind, and then the vital mind and the pure mind. Okay, so the sense mind. Nervous or desire self. The Nerves are a combination of physical and vital. There is electricity flowing in them. Biocurrents, what you call. The nerves won't work without the prana. It needs a little bit of electricity. It's interesting, we don't think of it that way. But there is electricity in so many creatures. Electricity, prana is electricity. Electricity is rather a form of prana. It can take so many different forms. But electricity is force, shakti, and it is one aspect of prana, life. Okay? You see a firefly, it actually has the power to emit light. From where is it coming? Electricity. What about the electric eel? You'll get a tremendous shock if you touch it. So the electricity is there. In us also it is there, but we don't realize it. Okay, so sometimes its activity can become too much. The electricity in the being. It is that which maintains the heat and all. And the mechanism can sometimes go wrong. We have a built-in thermostat. Our temperature remains more or less same. Sometimes it goes below, you have hypothermia. Sometimes it goes too high up, then you have a high temperature, it can kill you. Okay, so that is a sense mind. Nervous or desire self. The heart. Srindra is talking about the heart. The heart is usually the seat of the higher vital, the purer emotions. We have all sorts of emotions: love, sympathy, understanding of others, okay, trying to help others, compassion, charity, humanitarianism, nationalism, love of country, all these, love of friend. These are the higher vital characteristics. The lower vital characteristics are always negative. They destroy others and they destroy you also. And envy, jealousy, anger, irritability, okay, selfishness, all the other lower vital. Below the navel. The higher vital is situated between the heart and the navel. That's the location. Those who are very sensitive to art, okay, they used to tell me, one person used to tell me particularly, that when I see something beautiful, I get a physical sensation here. So, the nervous, the heart and the body. Each has, as it were, its own complex individuality and natural formation independent of the rest. So he's using the word individuality. You have a mental Purusha, you have a vital Purusha, you have a physical Purusha. There is actually a personality representing that. So this we don't realize. We think there is something mechanical and unconscious. No, there is a corresponding Purusha to each of these. Okay, so
Sri Aurobindo said that the true appreciation of poetry is here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just what you are saying. That it's not so much in the mind that it can appreciate it, but the real appreciation is here.
That's it. The difference between poetry and prose is exactly that. The vibration and the rhythm that it produces. The prose doesn't do that. For the prose you use your mind. But for poetry it comes through as vibrations more than the meaning. Even if you don't understand the meaning, it doesn't matter, it can produce. That's what a mantra is. The mantra produces vibrations which are helpful to you. Yeah. The higher vital. So, it neither agrees with itself, nor with the others, nor with the representative ego, which is a shadow cast by some central and centralizing self on our superficial ignorance. So let's look at each word and see whether we understand. It neither agrees with itself. That's strange. The mind doesn't agree with itself. We have contradictory thoughts. We have doubts. So when you have a doubt, the mind is contradicting itself. Should I go there or should I not go? I don't know. So there is a contradiction. The vital also. Sometimes you know that you should be doing something, but the higher vital tells you don't do it, and the lower vital says do it. So that also is a problem. Okay, so he's saying neither agrees with itself, nor with the others, nor with the representative ego. Note the word representative. What does the ego represent? It represents the self. The self is your true being. Same as using the word central being. So when the true being is the central, that is the main, okay, the central being. Sometimes he uses the word central being for the psychic also. But mainly he means the self. That which is your individual self, but it becomes universal when you realize it, and it is supporting you. Okay? Then he is using the word centralizing. That's interesting because it is that which centralizes you. If your body is one thing and your mind is another thing and your vital is another thing, then are you three different people? So there's something which centralizes the whole thing and makes it harmonious, apparently harmonious. Same they use the word disorderly order. So that is centralizing. Okay? So centralizing self on our superficial ignorance. The superficial ignorance is body, mind, life. There is a great disharmony between the two. The image that is usually given in visions for showing this disharmony between mind, life and body is, there is a grandfather, he has a daughter and she has a small child. And the child is helpless. He has to depend upon the mother and the grandfather. The grandfather sometimes tries to calm the mother and her strong feelings, sometimes punishing the lower, her son or her child. When he's doing something wrong, she punishes him. So the body is the one that suffers the most. Because it has no power, it has to obey helplessly. So this is the image that comes very often. It's not true that all mothers are punishing their children, but if you use the image for the body, mind, life, it applies. The vital is always mistreating, ill-treating the body. The mind tries to treat it properly, not very successfully, but mostly it is like that. So we have superficial ignorance. We find that we are composed not of one, but many personalities, and each has its own demands and differing nature. Okay? So the mind wants knowledge. It wants to understand things, basically. And the vital wants only enjoyment. That is its function. It wants to lord it over others. It wants to command. It wants to be master of itself. It wants power and want enjoyment. So it's a totally different thing from the mind. Then the body is the one that allows you motion and it allows you, it's like the chariot. You have to guide it. So totally different functions.
So these multiple personalities that we hear about, that we read about, are they occult possessions or are they part of what Sri Aurobindo is saying?
What do you mean by occult possession? Oh, you mean some other being comes and possesses them?
Yeah.
No.
Because they're very, very clearly different personalities. Some people have had 10 different personalities.
Oh, you mean, Acha, you're talking of the split personality.
Yes.
So, no, it's not that someone else comes and possesses you. Different parts of you come to the foreground at different times. There are very interesting videos on YouTube, and the person is saying, is conscious that I am several persons at the same time. But when I am one person, I am not the other one. Okay? And sometimes they can feel, oh, now the other person is coming. One video is there where it shows that, okay? And then she starts behaving in that way. Sometimes you are a child. You become, even your babbling, you start speaking like you are an adult, but you start speaking like a baby. So powerful the personality. So all this is normally, that's why Sri Aurobindo uses the word centralizing. So it is kept more or less in a logical way so that you feel yourself to be one. It centralizes you. But if that is not there, then this can happen.
And outbursts of anger, irrational outbursts of anger.
That's the vital, the lower vital mainly.
Low vital.
All the lower emotions are all from the vital. Okay, so centralizing self, we find that we are composed not of one, but many personalities, and each has its own demands and differing nature. Our being is a roughly constituted chaos into which we have to introduce the principle of a divine order. Okay, so that's what yoga is all about. You have to bring order and harmony between the different parts of your being. Moreover, we find that inwardly too, no less than outwardly, we are not alone in the world. The sharp separateness of our ego was no more than a strong imposition and delusion. We do not exist in ourselves. We do not really live apart in an inner privacy or solitude. In other words, he's saying that you are constantly in touch with the environment. Okay? The next sentence makes that clear. Our mind is a receiving, developing, modifying machine into which there is being constantly passed from moment to moment a ceaseless foreign flux, a streaming mass of disparate materials from above, from below, from outside. Much more than half our thoughts and feelings are not our own, in the sense that they take form out of ourselves. Of hardly anything can it be said that it is truly original to our nature. So, sometimes from above you can get intuitions. From below your subconscious, your old ideas, old habits, they send up also, they come up from the subconscious. And from the environment also you are constantly receiving. Now we are talking, some of your thoughts will come to me, some of my thoughts will go into you. He is talking only of the mind, but it happens also at the vital level and even the bodily level. The body level is the most obvious. When we are eating, that's what we are doing. We are interacting with the universe. The universe is giving us, at a physical level, it is giving us, putting something into us. And when we are putting something out also, we are rejecting, we are doing the same. We are interacting with the universe. Just like the wave and the sea. The wave exists only because of the sea. So we are also existing because of the environment. Exactly the same. And we are not conscious that there is a constant exchange between the environment and us. In fact, Mother says, now you are like a marketplace. So we are not conscious of it at all. Now, we'll go a little more detail. What he's saying is very interesting about the thoughts. A large part comes to us from others or from the environment, whether as raw material or as manufactured imports. Now, he is using a very interesting image again. When India became free, we were not producing any cars. Okay? So, if you want to produce cars, you must have the technology for it. So, if we didn't have the technology for it or we didn't have the materials, we would import the full car. So, sometimes the mind accepts somebody else's full thought, formed thought, it comes in. But then later on, you may say that, okay, importing a car is very costly, so let me import the cars, parts, and assemble them here. That's what he's saying, see? He says, whether as raw material or as manufactured imports. So, it becomes cheaper to get the parts and then assemble them. So, one idea comes from somewhere, another idea comes from somewhere else, and you put them together and get a new idea. So that's what he's saying.
Right now in Oroville, I need to figure out how to get a small enough vehicle that it can manage and maneuver on those narrow paths. So I was talking with my daughter, and she said, "Why don't you meet with Sukrit? He can fashion anything." And of course, it popped into my mind that this is what I've been using for the last 20 years in America. It has a 2-handle and a 3-wheel system, and you can put almost one maybe 1 ton you can put in the box, and then it dumps itself also. You can dump it also. She said, "Why don't you show him the picture and he'll manufacture it?" But that's the idea. You see, you get even the idea from someone else,
That's
and
right.
you can manufacture
That's right.
it.
So this is what's happening all the time. But note also that it's not always an import. You are also exporting your own ideas. That is why all scientific disciplines, they publish magazines, they publish their reports. Okay, they have a magazine always. Every department they have used, and their research results they publish in those areas. Then it is seen that different parts of the world independently, people sometimes are working on the same field. Okay, so one we know, Subhash Chandra Bose he discovered the principle of the radio in Calcutta. But Marconi was working in Italy on the same principle, and he got it. He became famous because Subhash Chandra Bose was not interested in name or fame, or nor was he interested in what is it called?
Nobel Prize.
Patent. He was not interested.
Patent.
Yeah, a patent. He didn't want. So Marconi got the credit for it. So things like that happen all the time. Two people are working on the same, sometimes even more. And then they exchange ideas, and then together they can produce something much better.
In horticulture, now that we have the internet, all these great repositories of pressed flowers and things,
Yes.
they have all combined, and they find that the person who first named it, whether he was in South America or India, gets the credit. The second person is a synonym. It would never have happened without the internet.
Yeah. The internet is a fantastic instrument. Tremendous instrument, no doubt about it. But you have to be careful. It's like the intra-conscient. There's a lot of truth in it and a lot of information, but sometimes there can be wrong information also.
Oh, yes.
You have to use a lot of discrimination.
Yes.
Normally in the self, in the superconscient planes, there is no error, but there can be a diminution of knowledge. There is a difference between error and lesser knowledge. A small distinction is there between the two. Okay, so we go back to our text. A large part comes to us from others or from the environment, whether as raw material or as manufactured imports. But still more largely, they come from universal nature here or from other worlds and planes, and their beings and powers and influences. Now, this is very interesting. Universal nature, clear. Okay? Universal nature is full of all these forces. It's full of vital forces, mental forces, even physical forces. They're all there. A storm is a physical force. A tsunami is a physical force. Vital forces are also there. They're all the time. And they enter into each one, and sometimes they can even have a personality, these forces. And then they can occupy also a human being if he is weak. What you call possession normally. Okay. But if you are strong, a possession is not usually possible. So, that's what he's saying. But he's saying now, from other worlds. So now, what does he mean by other worlds? Is he meaning the physical world, the vital world, the mental world, the higher mind world? Is he saying that? Or is he saying something out of our universe elsewhere? It's not very clear.
But
It's open.
I feel it's out.
Yes, it could be both.
Because he does speak of other planes of consciousness and, other worlds, more world they come from, and planes of being, and planes and their beings and powers.
That's right. So, so Allah comes. So universal nature here or from other worlds and planes and their beings and powers and influences. So all these worlds, they are inhabited. We feel that they may be impersonal and without any people living in those planes. But no, that's not true. All these planes have got people living in them. Individuals are living in these planes and with different characteristics. We know of angels. We know of Gandharvas, semi-divine creatures. We know at the overmind level, all the gods live there. Even the supermind is full of beings. So, the vital world we know, elves, gnomes, all these creatures live in the vital world. So, that's what he's saying. And he's including all. Their beings and powers and influences. For we are overtopped and environed by other planes of consciousness, mind planes, life planes, subtle matter planes, from which our life and action here are fed or fed on. So we are also contributing to the environment. Yeah? It's not that the universe is only feeding us. We are also sending out our stuff to the... There is a constant interchange. This idea is very clear in the Indian, we have spoken about it once earlier, very clear in the Indian philosophy. There you have your senses. Your senses are allowing the universe to interact with you. And you have, they are called the indriyas, jnanendriyas, senses of knowledge. But there are also senses of action, karmendriya. Okay? And they allow you to interact with the world. You have hands, and when you do something with the hand, you are having an effect in the physical world. So, karmendriya, hands, legs, I can kick a football, I can kick a stone. It is having something in the physical world is happening. The two organs at the lower end of the body. And my mouth, my speech. Speech. It can have a tremendous effect. I can show kindness with my words. I can be very cruel with my words. I have an effect in the physical world. So you are interacting in this way. The world is interacting with through your senses. And you are acting with the world through your jnanendriyas. Karmendriyas. Knowledge senses, action senses.
Vivekananda said, beware of thoughts. They're more powerful than actions.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because they enter into you and you don't know that they are influencing you. So if you are... So Srinivasa says always, he says, put a sentry at the gate, your mental gate, put a sentry. Do the same with your vital. Don't allow things to come in. Okay, so... subtle matter planes from which our life and action here are fed or fed on, pressed, dominated, made use of for the manifestation of their forms and forces. These forces are trying to always manifest in the physical world, and they are trying to do that through the human beings, or sometimes even through animals. Okay, so in any case, they are trying to manifest here. And Srimanta has given a whole gradation. Here are fed or fed on, but not only fed on is absolutely, but pressed, trying to feed, dominated, sometimes succeeding very well, made use of for the manifestation of their forms and forces. The difficulty of our separate salvation is immensely increased by this complexity and manifold openness and subjection to the in-streaming energies of the universe. So, when these forces are coming into you, you are not even conscious of them, let alone control them. So, your difficulty increases. You are trying to be sincere, but insincere forces are coming into you, influencing you. That's why Srinath is saying, is immense. The difficulty of our separate salvation is immensely increased by this complexity and manifold openness. We are open in mind, in vital and even body, and subjection to the in-streaming energies of the universe. Of all this, we have to take account, to deal with it, to know what is the secret stuff of our nature and its constituent and resultant motions, and to create in it all a divine center and a true harmony and luminous order. So it's a huge task. That is the reason why many of the yogis give up the physical world and eliminate a whole lot of difficulties and go to the cave or the forest. Do only that much of work which is necessary for your survival. It's an easier path. But then why is Sri Aurobindo inviting more trouble? Because then you get more power and your perfection becomes more integral. The others are escaping. They are not doing what, they are only going into their higher being and very happily they are stationed there. You have a higher being and a lower being. But Sri Aurobindo wants to transform the lower being also, which is the difficult work. Okay. So this discussion in the Life Divine is the materialist denial and the refusal of the ascetic. The ascetic doesn't want to have anything to do with the physical world. He wants only the pure consciousness. So, I go to the next sentence. Oh no, we have finished the para.
Next para.
And to create in it all a divine center and a true harmony and luminous order. So, before we go on to the next para, I'll just summarize this para in my own words. We get a gist of what he's saying. Okay, so all these parts of the being seem to have different characteristics and even worse, work independently of each other. Okay. The body is ruled by tamas. It has stability as a feature and it is loath to any change, progress. The body doesn't want that. The vital is overeager for enjoyment, whatever its quality. It demands mastery, satisfaction, conquest. The mind is often a slave to the other two. It tries to understand, govern, organize what little of life it thinks it can control. Each contradicts the others and the ego, which is common to all the three. Each also contradicts itself internally and ties itself into knots of opposite principles, dualities. Thus, this disorder has to be controlled, corrected, harmonized, and made effective for meaningful action in the world, so that fulfillment can be attained outwards as well as inwards. Man is constantly being invaded by individual as well as universal impersonal forces. Physical forces, vital forces, mental forces, spiritual forces also. The mind receives thoughts from outside. These can be unformed, raw material, or they can be semi-formulated ideas and sometimes even mature, well-conceived thoughts. Our mind too exports its own thoughts, own ideas, own impulsions, releasing them into the general universal mental environment. The same phenomena is repeated by the life in us, the vital, and even the body interacts with the external physical world. Thus, hardly can we claim anything, idea, feeling, emotion, action, as our own. We are just a compendium of all sorts of forces. They control us more than we control them. Even the subtler planes above the material send down their influences and impulsions, whether we perceive them or not. Therefore, individual salvation, liberation, is rendered really difficult. All this has to be seen, acknowledged, dealt with, so that our being becomes harmonious, luminous, and capable of effective action. So this is what he's saying in this para. We can go on to the next para now. In the ordinary paths of yoga, the method used for dealing with these conflicting materials is direct and simple. One or another of the principal psychological forces in us is selected as our single means for attaining to the divine. The rest is quieted into inertia or left to starve in its smallness. The bhakta, seizing on the emotional forces of the being, the intense activities of the heart, abides concentrated in the love of God, gathered up as into a single one-pointed tongue of fire. He is indifferent to the activities of thought, throws behind him the importunities of the reason, cares nothing for the mind's thirst for knowledge. All the knowledge he needs is his faith and the inspirations that well up from a heart in communion with the divine. He has no use for any will to works that is not turned to the direct worship of the beloved or the service of the temple. The man of knowledge, self-confined by a deliberate choice to the force and activities of discriminative thought, finds release in the mind's hushed, inward-drawn endeavor. He concentrates on the idea of the self, succeeds by a subtle inner discernment in distinguishing its silent presence amid the wailing activities of nature, and through the perceptive idea arrives at the concrete spiritual experience. He is indifferent to the play of the emotions, deaf to the hunger call of passion, closed to the activities of life. The more blessed he, the sooner they fall away from him and leave him free, still and mute, the eternal non-doer. The body is his stumbling block. The vital functions are his enemies. If their demands can be reduced to a minimum, that is his great good fortune. The endless difficulties that arise from the environing world are dismissed by erecting firmly against them a defense of our outer physical and inner spiritual solitude. Safe behind a wall of inner silence, he remains impassive and untouched by the world and by others. To be alone with oneself or alone with the divine, to walk apart with God and his devotees, to entrench oneself in the single self-ward endeavor of the mind or Godward passion of the heart is a trend of these yogas. The problem is solved by the excision of all but the one central difficulty which pursues the one chosen motive force. Into the midst of the dividing calls of our nature, the principle of an exclusive concentration comes sovereignly to our rescue. So, this difficulty of the complexity of our nature, most of the yogas take the simple path and they say, okay, it's too complicated, I'll concentrate only on one. And they go there, ignoring all the rest. That's what basically he is saying, in great detail and very poetic language. So, the man of knowledge wants only the self. He wants knowledge. He doesn't care for emotions. He doesn't care for food, clothes, anything. He just doesn't bother. He will do the minimum of physical action and concentrate on the wanting to get to the self all the time.
What do they do for the world?
For
The world.
they don't do anything. That's the whole problem.
Yes.
Whereas that's what Surendra is wanting.
Yes.
That is a selfish escape. Fine. You have found your solution, but you are being selfish spiritually. You are thinking only of yourself. The world remains what it is.
And the bhakta?
And the
Bhakta?
oh. He also is being selfish, na? He is wanting only love with the divine. He doesn't care what the others are doing. Same. But there are chances of his having more charitable thoughts, okay, and wanting to help, okay. That aspect is there. It's not that it happens every time for everybody, no. For instance, in the ideas of compassion and service to others is very common in Christianity. You try to help others, okay? And it's also there very much in Buddhism, okay? Helping others. So, it does come. But the Jnana Yogi, the one who wants only knowledge, usually doesn't care for the others. So, he has explained that they simplify the procedure of yoga by concentrating only on one thing, ignoring all the rest. So you get knowledge of the divine, or you get love of the divine, or sometimes if you are doing karma yoga, you can, but karma yoga is more inclusive than the other two. The other two are very exclusive. They cut out emotion and cut out physical action. Or they cut out thoughts and physical action, depending on what path you are following. So, Sri Aurobindo is not in favor of that. He has no objection to it, but he is not in favor of that. He chooses a less selfish action. You must be able to be of some use to the physical world. What is the use of your knowledge if you are not able to help others with it? It's an individual liberation you are having. Okay, for you, but doesn't help the world.
So the question is then, why has one taken birth?
That's
if not
right.
to do something for the world?
The man of knowledge will say, individual liberation. That's why there's a whole chapter in the Life Divine, the destiny of the individual. He is not finding fault with it. Sri Aurobindo doesn't find fault with it, but it's a very noble pursuit in life to get liberation, no doubt. But it could be better. That's the whole point. So, it's quite simple, so we can go fast also. In the ordinary paths of yoga, ordinary paths, he means Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga. Okay? So, the method used for dealing with these conflicting materials is direct and simple. One or another of the principal psychological forces in us is selected as our single means of attaining to the divine. So, principal psychological forces, mainly three. Knowledge in the mind, okay? Love and devotion in the heart, okay? And action in the physical world. So these are the three principal things which you use. Psychological forces in us are selected as a single means of attaining to the divine. The rest is quieted into inertia or left to starve in its smallness. Don't bother about it. Don't feed it. Starving. When you don't satisfy your desires, you are starving the vital. No? You can even starve the body. That's what they consider it sometimes a spiritual discipline of great value. Upavasam, na? What is it in English? What is the word? Fasting. Mortification is the idea that enjoyment, the more enjoyment you have, the more attachment you will get. So, I will not enjoy. That's a neutral thing. So far, so good. But now, to stop my enjoyment and stop my desire, I will mortify, I will punish my body. I will punish my vital. That's mortification. That's a totally wrong thing.
We see this in Italy, when they have us in a certain season, they
Yes.
Jainism.
And when you read that novel which made the Da Vinci Code, even in Christianity you have sometimes that
yes.
you punish yourself. Abstaining from feeding the vital is okay to a certain extent. There are problems there also, but it's okay. Because if you abstain from feeding the vital and satisfying your desires, depending on your nature, there will be two reactions. One, if you are a very strong person, vital, very strong vitally, your vital will revolt. You will start getting angry in situations which don't require anger. Okay? I'll tell you an interesting thing. Recently, one of my students told me. The student's father, she had a grandfather, and the grandfather died. And the father was very much affected by this incident of the death. But apparently he was keeping quiet, but for no reason at all he started showing his anger everywhere. So he could not get his desire for life, for his father to live. So there was a revolt in the being. We do the same thing with your vital also. Deny it, its desire, it will have strong reactions, very strong reactions. But if you are weak, vitally weak and you are not a very strong person, it will go into a depression. It won't cooperate. The vital will tell you, oh, you are not giving me what I want. I won't cooperate with you. So you go into a depression. So this is what happens. So that's why it is better to ask the divine to do what has to be done in you. You surrender to the divine. And he will do exactly that. How much you can tolerate, that much he will do for you. Slowly he will work on you. And if the psychic is there, then there won't be any suffering. Because you will accept whatever is being said. So, starving. We went into that because of the starving, he's saying. No? So, left to starve in its smallness. The bhakta sees, so he has spoken about he started with the bhakta. The bhakta seizing on the emotional forces of the being, the intense activities of the heart, abides concentrated in the love of God, gathered up as into a single one-pointed tongue of fire. Concentrate only on the love of God. He is indifferent to the activities of thought, throws behind him the importunities of the reason, cares nothing for the mind's thirst for knowledge. All the knowledge he needs is his faith and the inspirations that well up from a heart in communion with the divine. Okay, so he doesn't care for thinking on knowledge. He doesn't care for knowledge at all. He has no use for any will to works. Karma yoga. He has no will to works. And that is not turned to the direct worship of the Lord or the service of the temple. The phrase service of the temple is very interesting. It can be psychological, it can be physical. When you do service for the temple, even physical work, okay, whatever you do, bringing of flowers, doing this, doing that, is service of the temple. But the temple is your heart. And you are doing that. That also is. Internally also it can be. Sri Aurobindo says in the hour of God, keep the temple clean if you wish to install there the divine presence. So that will be the service of the temple.
But this line, as I understand it, is that he has no use for things that are not for the divine or the beloved.
Yeah. No use. He absolutely doesn't care for thoughts. You try to tell him something, he doesn't care for it. He doesn't bother. I want only... That's why love is supposed to be very blind. And one of the phenomena of this so-called love for the divine and only my divine is the religious violence that you see. The intolerance of certain religions. It can go to that far. It can go to the other extreme. All right. So, he has no use for any works that is not turned to the direct worship of the beloved or the service of the temple. The man of knowledge, now he comes to the man of knowledge, self-confined by a deliberate choice to the force and activities of discriminating thought. The main thing is you must have discrimination. You must understand what is the right and the wrong, what is the truth and what is falsehood. Okay, so that's why that neti method. I am not the body, I am not the body, I am not the vital, I am not the mind, I am not the senses. Then what am I? I am pure, blissful, Satchidananda. You concentrate on that way. Self-confined by a deliberate choice to the force and activities of discriminative thought, finds release in the mind's hushed, inward drawn endeavor. Note the word hushed is implying silence. Even make your thoughts, hush your thoughts. Even the thoughts are an obstacle. Let them quiet. Okay? Inward drawn endeavor, a concentration. He concentrates on the idea of the self, succeeds by a subtle inner discernment in distinguishing its silent presence amid the wailing activities of nature. The wailing activities of nature, thoughts, emotions and physical actions. These veil the soul. Wailing activities of nature. And through the perceptive idea arrives at the concrete spiritual experience. The perceptive idea. That's the idea that starts perceiving. In Indian philosophy, you have very interesting Pashyanti Buddhi. It's a Buddhi, the idea that sees the reality. Not constructs or imagines or feels, no, sees, perceives. I'm using the word perceive. So it corresponds perfectly to the Pashyanti Buddhi, the Buddhi that sees. Okay? So he is indifferent to the play of the emotions, deaf to the hunger call of passion, close to the activities of life. The more blessed he, the sooner they fall away from him and leave him free, still and mute, the eternal non-doer. He realizes that he is only a witness and he is not doing anything. And this is the biggest experience, one of the big experiences in yoga. When you take your mind to the self, you see that you are not doing anything. Universal nature is making you do everything. Universal nature is moving your body and controlling your vital and your thoughts. You are not doing anything. You are just watching. Just like universal nature is making the river flow. The river doesn't think I am flowing. The tree grow. The universal nature is making the tree grow. The tree doesn't think I am growing. Exactly in the same way for us also, it is making your body grow, your vital have emotions, your thoughts have thoughts, but you think you are doing because you have an ego. So, when you go to the self, the ego disappears and the truth reveals itself to you, that you are the non-doer. So, you become free, calm, quiet, watching everything below you without being affected. That's the path of the Jnana Yogi. Okay? The eternal non-doer. The body is his stumbling block. The vital functions are his enemies. Note that. Huh? The vital functions are his enemies. The senses have to be brought under control. They mislead you. They all go outwards. You have to pull them in. The usual images is like the chariot is pulled by 5 horses. The chariot is your body. And the horses are running outwards all the time. So you have to control them. That's the image used in the Gita also and elsewhere also. So you have to control your senses, not let them run wild. Pull them in. So, the body is stumbling block, the vital functions are his enemies. If their demands can be reduced to a minimum, that is his great good fortune. The endless difficulties that arise from the environing world are dismissed by erecting firmly against them a defense of our outer physical and inner spiritual solitude. Outer physical, go away to the forest, go away to the cave, or go to your attic if you are in a city. Try not to be disturbed by anybody physically. And inner spiritual solitude. Safe behind a wall of inner silence, he remains impassive and untouched by the world and by others. To be alone with oneself or alone with the divine, to walk apart with God and his devotees, to entrench oneself in the single self-ward endeavor of the mind or Godward emotion of the heart is a trend of these yogas. The problem is solved by the excision of all but the one central difficulty which pursues the one chosen motive force. Into the midst of the dividing cause of our nature, the principle of an exclusive concentration comes sovereign to our rescue. So, Srimanta used the word Gordian knot. Our whole thing is a knot. And Srimanta wants you not to cut the knot and go up. He wants you to unravel the knot.
Ah, yes.
Use your body, mind, life also. Don't reject them.
So your image of the sentry is very critical here.
Absolutely. That is Srivanta's image. He says that in the letters. Put a sentry at the gate of your mind and your vital. So we stop here today and we take up next time, but for the sadhaka.